What's going on, everybody? I am here to do a review for the movie The Suicide Squad. And let me just start off by saying that this movie is miles, leaps, bounds, light years, however you want to call it, ahead and better than the Suicide Squad that we got back in 2016. The one in 2016 was mediocre at best, and that's at best. So it was nothing beyond that could have really saved that movie. And it kind of threw me off because that movie wasn't that good. So to hear that they were doing another one, I was like, I don't know how that's gonna work. I'll admit I went into this movie being skeptical because of how the last one was. But I think really what attributes to how good this movie was goes back to the direction. Now, it was very controversial to have James Gunn come on and do this movie because of a couple of reasons. One, because he was already attached to Marvel and the MCU and Disney with Guardians of the Galaxy. And we saw what he did with that franchise. But then, he had a bit of a controversial run when some tweets had resurfaced from his past on Twitter, and Disney pretty much did away with him. And then DC said, come on over here and make this movie. And then Disney got back on the phone with him and said, James, we made a mistake. We need you to come and do this Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which he's now currently working on right now. So the direction in this movie definitely made this Suicide Squad feel a whole lot different than the one we got in 2016. The one in 2016, it had potential, but it was a lot of things in there that just did not work. Like the villain could have been a dope villain with Enchantress, but it just fell completely flat. I really wanted to see what they were going to do with her character because she's a very powerful being. She's a witch, an ancient one, and they really just didn't do anything with the villain compared to the villain that they had with this one. But before I really go into that, like I said, the direction of this movie was very good. It was very well shot. It even felt like sometimes it was almost like watching a comic book. Let's leap off the page and just jump onto the screen. And that's what I wanted to go into when it comes to something that deals with comic book characters such as this. And I'm going to be honest, DC needed a saving grace at this point in time because, DC is kind of a hit or miss type of thing. Sometimes they have more misses than they have hits. But I think with this one, it got knocked out of the park. This right here is probably one of the best films that I saw so far this year, hands down. It had everything. It had action, it had drama, it had comedy. And the thing is, they didn't hit you over the head with too much of the other thing. They spread everything out pretty evenly. And then whenever it came to a particular character doing something, they stuck with that while mixing other things in. As a matter of fact, let me take that back. Every character had something to them within all elements where it wasn't just heavily leaned on with one person throughout the movie. And I like that they, with so many characters, they were able to spread out the support and love and, focus on different characters because the Suicide Squad is a group after all. It's not a solo film. So they definitely had to make sure that every character had their bit of shine. Although the first few characters that appeared in the movie, let's just say some characters didn't make it past the beach, and I'm going to just leave it at that. For those of you who have already seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But, they brought some old characters back from the previous Suicide Squad, such as Viola Davis as Amanda Waller, who hands down is like the perfect Amanda Waller. And, if you don't know who she is, she's basically the leader and she organizes the group. She basically tells them, like, look, here's the mission. You're going to do the mission. I'm going to inject this little bomb device into you. And if you decide to leave the mission, I'm going to press this button and it's going to detonate and blow your head off. And that's pretty much what she is. Like, she's just someone who rules with an iron fist. I can tell, like, she didn't really have much to do in this movie compared to the first one. I felt like she had more to do in the first one than she did with this one. But I could tell her level of intensity amped up in this movie. Like, she really was going in with the scenes that she had. But Viola Davis is a phenomenal actress anyway, so whatever role that she gets, she's going to do it no matter how big or small the role is. They brought back Margot Robbie, of course, playing Harley Quinn. I'm glad that they did not center the movie so much on Harley Quinn. They did that with the first Suicide Squad movie because it was the first time that Harley Quinn was brought to life in a live action version of herself. We always was used to seeing her as an animated character, so we never saw her as a live action character. So I understood why they put a lot of emphasis on her, and they brought the Joker in to kind of give her a storyline within a story. And that was fine for that time, but then they gave her own movie, with the Birds of Prey, and that was a flop. So people, I think they got Harley Quinn fatigue. They was like, oh, it was so nice to see her come on the screen and everything like that, but now we're tired of seeing you just go away. I'm glad that in this movie, we know Harley Quinn is there. We know she is one of the most popular DC characters ever, whether hero, anti-hero, or villain, or otherwise, especially for her being a female character. So I'm glad that in this movie, James Gunn decided to scale back on her and not give her so much screen time, because this is not a Harley Quinn movie. It's not Harley Quinn and the Suicide Squad. It's the Suicide Squad, and she just happens to be a member of the squad. So I'm glad that they did not have her do too much in this movie, because I'm gonna be honest, if they had did the Harley thing where we got Harley Quinn fatigue, that probably would have took me out of it for me. But I'm glad that they decided to scale back a little bit with her character. But she did do a good job as usual. The other character that they brought back in was the Rick Flag character. Of course, he was the team leader for the Suicide Squad in the first movie, and he was the team leader as well for this movie as well. He kind of played, in my opinion, the same type of character that he did. I feel like he didn't have that many scenes in this one. I think they kind of scaled back on his character too. So what I noticed is that the characters that they brought in from the first Suicide Squad movie did not have as much screen time as the new characters, and I think that was actually lovely, because those characters that they brought back from the first Suicide Squad movie have already been established, so we know who they are. It's not like we have to reestablish who they are. We know who they are. We know what their mission is. We know that they're down with the plan. So now it's time to give these other characters some shine, these other new characters, so we can figure out who they are. They also brought back Captain Boomerang. Nobody really cared for his character in the first one. I didn't. And I have a feeling with this one, no one's going to care either. Especially since, I'm just say the beach. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that they brought back, any old characters, before I get to the new characters. I think those are all the old characters, because, Will Smith, he didn't come back to reprise his role as Deadshot. So we don't know what's going on with his character. We don't know if his character's alive or dead or whatever the case may be. But then they brought in a slew of new characters. I can't remember every last one of them, especially the ones on that beach. And I'm not really going to focus on them because they didn't have that much screen time. So I'm going to focus on the ones that really did have more time. I'm going to start with the Polka-Dot Man. At first, I'm like, the Polka-Dot Man, what does he do? what's his situation? But his backstory was a bit interesting and everything like that. He was basically a guy who, his ability is he was like a failed experiment. His mother was trying to create superhuman kids, and he had other siblings. Something happened with them. They didn't make it. He's still the only one of his mother's children that's still alive. Even his mother is dead. And she basically turned him into this superhuman type of person, where his ability is he can shoot these kind of like exploding polka dot type of things, beams out of his wrist off of his body. So I thought that was actually a pretty dope ability when you think about it. It's just that his name just makes it sound like it's a corny person with a corny ability, but when you look at the movie, it's actually a very dope ability and a dope power to have. It's just that his story, his background is horrible with what his mother did to him, and what he has to do is something he has to do 2 times a day, and if he doesn't do it, he'll probably die. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and watch the movie and you can figure out what that is. Another character they brought in was King Shark. King Shark was definitely one of the highlights for the film, and I'm glad that they did not underpower him, because we all know King Shark he looks like a shark, that can talk. He has human capabilities, but he looks like a shark, and he's like a fish that of course can survive outside of water, while a real shark could not do it. And I liked King Shark because he had some of the comedic elements, but they also did not make him into a court jester or a complete comedy relief. Like, they actually let him get busy. Like, he was eating people, ripping people apart, and all types of things. Like, they actually let King Shark be a savage when it was time for him to really, really go in. But I really did like his character. Like I said, definitely one of the highlights of the film. Another character they had was called the Ratcatcher Part 2. Okay, call her Part 2 because she's the daughter of the Ratcatcher Part 1, which is her dad. When I saw the previews for the movie, I was like, who is she and why does she have all these rats around? Like, is just sending rats out just her ability? And it actually is. Like, she basically, is able to communicate with rats, and she has this little I don't know what it's called. It's like a talisman or something. As she turns it on, a bunch of rats will just come in. And let's just say in the last and final act of the movie, she was the real MVP. Like, she really came through in the clutch with her ability at the end of the movie. As a matter of fact, if you look at the previews or the trailer for the movie and you see a part where there's a bunch of rats coming around here, that's the last scene. But I'm not going to really tell you what happened in that scene. I'm going to go ahead and let you watch it. Another new character was Idris Elba's character, who played Bloodsport. And I think a lot of people feel that Bloodsport was supposed to be the replacement of Deadshot because, Will Smith was a person who shot guns and he had good aim. Bloodsport was kind of the same thing. But the only difference between Bloodsport and Deadshot is that Bloodsport could shoot with good aim with any type of weapon or projectile weapon, while Deadshot was only good with shooting guns and any type of gun and have good aim. And then, Bloodsport, he has a daughter played by Storm Reed, and that scene, it was one scene in this movie at the beginning of the movie where they are talking to each other, if you want to call it that, because it was more like one big arguing fest. And I swear, that scene kind of reminded me of when Janet Jackson and Tupac were going at it in the movie Poetic Justice, when they were literally dropping the F-bombs left and right. Like, I wonder, did James Gunn get that inspiration for that scene from that movie? Because it reminded me so much of that scene right there. And in that moment right there, that's like the most acting range I've ever seen Storm Reed do. Not saying that she's a bad actress, but I've always seen her play more soft-spoken roles. But this one, in that one scene that she did, because she only had like 2 scenes in the movie, in that one scene that she did with Idris Elba when they were talking to each other through the glass, she showed a lot of acting range in that role, to the point where I had to sit back in my chair and almost got chills through my body just listening to that scene and watching them go at it the way that they did. But you could tell that there was a bad relationship between the both of them and all types of stuff like that hopefully gets resolved. And she basically comes to the jail to tell him, like, look, something happened, I have a court date, and if you don't do this mission, I could go to jail and I could probably end up in this same spot as you, and then they might send me out on some kind of a suicide mission just like you. So that's what actually inspires him to actually want to go do this mission, because he didn't want to do it, but he knows that in order to save his daughter and prevent her from ending up in that same place, he has to go do it. And that's how he ends up on the squad. But basically, his ability is that he's a very good shot with pretty much anything that he uses. He was like in the military or mercenary or whatever the case may be. Another character that they brought in was John Cena's character, known as Peacemaker. I was about to call him Peacemaker. And by the way, he is getting a show. From what I've heard, he is supposed to be getting a show, but based on what I saw what happened with his character, it's probably most likely going to be a prequel type of show. But he basically was another military type of person. He was his character actually was very impressive. Like, he kind of had some like goofy moments, but like King Shark, when it was time to get busy, he went in. He took care of the mission and he handled the job the way that he was supposed to. And I'm so glad that they did not try to make him do wrestling maneuvers. I mean, we know John Cena has a wrestling and WWE background, but we don't have to see him do, a maneuver of him wrestling. I'm glad that when it came to him fighting, that they allowed him to just, fight. And I'm glad that they didn't give him too much hand-to-hand combat and they let him use a weapon. It was one scene in the movie where he literally took this little hatcher and he just hatched this person as he was walking. I said, damn. That's what I wanted from the first Suicide Squad movie, was the savagery. And that's what I got in this movie, literally from beginning to end. And that's exactly what I got, along with a good story. I think that pretty much covers all the new characters, because I'm not really focusing on the ones at the beach. Now, when it came to the villain, which was Starro, Starro was basically this gigantic starfish with this giant eye in the middle of it, and the name of the mission was called Operation Starfish. They basically had to go find Starro and kill it. Starro was a very good villain, and I actually was reading people's comments when they were talking about the trailer. They said, oh, Starro's going to be in it. I said they hope they do Starro well, because Starro is like an elite villain to the Suicide Squad. And I can see why now. And like, at first, going into this, I'm like, how are they going to take down this gigantic starfish with this giant eyeball in the middle of the body? Like how are they going to take it out? And it was so great how they did that. Goes back to the Ratcatcher and how elite and goated she was. But I'm going to leave it right there. But definitely, all in all, I really enjoyed this movie. This was definitely a good movie. DC needed this one, and I'm glad that they got it with this one. I don't know if they're going to go forward and do like another Suicide Squad type of movie. This just seems like a movie that I don't know if it's a continuity type of thing that continues on with a particular story. But DC movies are pretty much all over the place. Unlike, with Marvel, they follow a particular story to keep you going and connect everything towards the end. But even if they decide not to go forward with it, I'm fine with this one. I really did enjoy this movie. It had laughs. Yeah, some moments might make you cry. There was some drama. It was a bit of everything in this movie that everybody will most definitely enjoy. Definitely better than the first one. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this movie down in the comments. Will you watch it? By the way, if you do have HBO Max, you can watch it because it is a Warner Brothers property. So that means you will be able to watch it on HBO Max if you cannot make it to a theater and watch it for yourself on the big screen. But y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments, and I will talk to you in the next one.